Welcome to the Eyes Up Mindset podcast, where we explore what it means to grow daily and find our best in every aspect of life.
Welcome back to another episode of the Eyes Up Mindset podcast. I'm John Shirkey, here with my friend, my co-host, Jamie Wagner. Jamie, as always, good to see you.
You as well, man. This is a really cool episode for us. It's a hard episode for us, a hard episode in some ways also, right? It fills us up. I had a coach, Coach Jay, has been on the podcast. He used to say, my heart is full and it's coming out of my eyes. I think we had a few of those moments in the podcast today. Trevor Solem, a really good friend of ours, and an awesome coach. And we get to dive into how he's growing people and some of the hard challenges he's having in life. And it's a little bit longer episode, but we were just having a conversation like we would a couple of buddies. And I'm excited to bring it to you guys.
Before we get to the conversation, Jamie, no story, which I need you to, I'm prepping you for that right now. No stories.
Yeah.
What's something that went well this week in terms of you living Eyes Up? What's something that you are struggling with or working on?
Work stuff, honestly, is a little bit challenging right now because school ended, transition. So there's some transition stuff I'm struggling with. That's just a challenge. But I have been reading again a little bit more. I read What Made Maddie Run recently, and it is an incredibly powerful book, and I read it in like a day and a half. So really great stuff. How about you?
So I think I've traveled this last week a little bit for some family stuff and getting back. So something that not going quite as well as I would love is I sometimes have a difficult time transitioning back to regular life. And so I'm working on kind of having some grace for myself and the people around me. And the thing that's going well, I guess I've been running. And our friend Luke, who now three in a row. Thanks, Luke. Reached out and he said, "Hey, you are a runner by definition," and kind of challenged me on my claiming to not be a runner. And so I've worked on, and it's gotten better in terms of the language I use around that because it's a huge deal. So
absolutely
cool. I look forward to having those each week, Jamie. I think those are cool things that we can share, and because listeners, you're dealing with stuff and sometimes it goes well and sometimes it doesn't. So appreciate you. Looking forward to sharing this conversation with Trevor Solem, head golf coach, Minnewaska. Let's go. Trevor Solem, head boys golf coach, Minnewaska area high school, also assistant football. I think you coached wrestling at one point, didn't you?
No wrestling, junior high, wrestling. B-team basketball.
Junior high B-team basketball. Just want to make sure we get all of your resume out there.
Well,
also
guys,
former baseball.
Yeah, coach. You forgot something vital here. I mean, Trevor, I live in your hometown. I live like a block and a half away from where you grew up. You graduated with my wife, and yet the reason I know you is because you coached junior high baseball with John.
Yes. The 7th to his 8th at that point in time.
Yeah. Which I think, had it not been for me stealing your better players to bring them to my team, your team probably would have beat mine. Probably
would have.
Mostly just coaching.
I think there was one of those kids from that 8th grade class that ended up like sticking around with me because I moved to JV with them. It wasn't a lot of them that made it.
I guess that says something about, my baseball acumen and but we are not here to talk about me today. Trevor Solem, obviously a friend of ours, if you haven't figured that out by now. Trevor, we've been talking about having you on for a long time, and we have, 3 or 4 conversations like this every week, with one of us, if not both of us. So we are honored and blessed to have you here today. So thanks for being willing to join us for a conversation.
Yeah, no problem. I've been waiting for my call for a while. So
I think it's funny that you guys talk about being baseball coaches, and that's kind of how all of our relationships started. Yet, like, the reason we're really in this conversation is because you coach golf now and a different spring sport. And anybody that's listening to the podcast knows that John is a big time golfer. I like to play golf, and I got to be a part of your week last week, which was the section meet. And I know it didn't end up the way that you guys wanted to, but walk us through a little bit of what your expectations were going in and how your guys responded. Cause I think that's a really big part of this conversation. I think it's a big frame for the conversation generally, is like how that all went. Cause I don't know that it would have went that way a year or two ago.
Yeah. So we came in with pretty high expectations for the season. We had 6 players that could go out and play some pretty good golf. We went in, set a team goal to shoot 310 on day 1. We missed that by 1. We shot 311. The team that was in first place shot 310, so we were right where we needed to be. And if anybody knows anything about golf, the emotional roller coaster that can happen on the golf course, it's a guarantee. No matter which player you are, if you're the A guy or if you're the D guy or the 1 or the 6 for high school, that's the thing that you have to be able to manage the most. And we did a pretty good job of it. We gave a few away on day 1. Day 2, we said we got to be down under 310 in order to be able to compete in this thing. And we did. We shot 307, the best round that I've had coaching with in my 4 years. Super proud of my guys, but we couldn't keep up. The team that beat us fired off a 295, so their top 4 scores added together. We just didn't have the firepower. Yes, we gave some back, but looking back on it right now, we probably weren't a better team. If we had put it all together, we could have been close to them. But obviously second place in the section out of 15 teams is pretty good. I did have an individual that won the section. So he's going to be moving on to state. So that's pretty awesome. But I guess my message for the most part was, let's go out and compete. Let's have fun. And let's enjoy it while we're out there.
One of the things that struck me while I was there, and I didn't text you this afterwards because I knew we were having you on the podcast, is how proud I was of the way that you interacted with your athletes in comparison to some of the other coaches out there. Like, you just are constantly reaffirming them. You got a hand on the shoulder, a hand on the head, giving them confidence, giving them what we call good juice here at Eyes Up, right? Giving them a ton of good juice constantly. And it's just not what you see at every high school or youth sporting event. And I was so encouraged. And like I said, just proud to call you a friend, because your kids, the second you got done with the interaction with them, their body language changed, right? It went from being frustrated or down, head down, eyes somewhere else, to kind of coming back to the moment and giving them something to focus on. What sort of things are you telling them in those moments when they're getting frustrated? Or is it just, hey, I love you, I care about you, let's go?
So yes to both of those things, or the second part. The first part is the last thing I talk to a kid about before they're getting ready to hit a shot. So if they're in trouble or if they're in the fairway or wherever they are, is see the shot, have confidence, finish your swing and go get them. Something in that order along those lines, just to reaffirm. If there's a fist bump, if there's a high five or whatever, but you got to be confident. You got to finish your swing and go get them. Like, I don't want to take a club away from a kid. If they could see it in their head, man, go for it. Let's do this, and I'll get out of their way. But my kids know that I care about every single one of them. Talk about it all the time with them. There's hugs on the course. There's tears on the course. There's laughs, there's high fives, and it probably all happens on every single hole with all of them. But the shoulder thing is big, and we really pushed it this year. Your shoulders are down, you're in trouble. Not only physically with your golf swing, but mentally. So you really have to make sure that you're maintaining the posture when you're out at the course, so you can keep your eyes up and you can see what you got coming ahead of you.
So Trev, after day 2, you go out and shoot 307. You said best score that your team's ever shot, in a single round, and you end up, like you said, a little bit short. What's the message to the kids? What was their response to that? And what was your message to them, in that moment when you realize, hey, we played really well today, but it wasn't good enough today?
Yeah. I made sure to let all my guys know how proud I was of the way that we played. Everybody improved from day one to day two, minus a couple things here and there. And as a coach, looking at the bigger picture of things other than not winning the section, that's exactly what you want. You want improvement from day one to day two, or from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. And the message that I reiterated was not necessarily always about golf. Yeah, our score was better, but I can think of 100 different moments on the course that I was able to watch a kid be able to mentally prepare himself for situations, and to be able to go from down in the dumps to being able to manage yourself on the course to get through that snowball effect that you got to try and make sure you stay away from. So the message that I sent was about how proud I was of the way they played, and how much growth I saw, not only as a golfer, but as humans in general, to just kind of make sure that you're able to manage yourself better, because there's no other game closer to life than golf when it comes to managing those emotions. So we talk about that a lot.
What was the response from the boys? Because I know I've been in that situation. I played golf my sophomore, junior, and senior year. Fortunate enough to go to the state tournament my sophomore year, and then my senior year we shot a 301 in the last round. Back then it was just you played 2 rounds at different times. It wasn't a cumulative score, but we shot a 301 and thinking, man, we're in good shape, and we lose by 3 or 4 to a Staples team that just played better. As a player, it was like just like a gut punch at the end. And then you start to go back through. Did you have any conversations like that with your kids where they were reflecting on their rounds, either, that day or the previous day, where it's like, man, I know I left some out there, kind of where you started to see them go down that road of blame or what if or etc.
Yeah, I did. I had one senior in particular who really struggled coming down the stretch, and he wasn't handling it well. He was playing really well up until about hole 14, and then he was able to hold it together for a couple more, and then 17 and 18, really got to him, and he threw some strokes away, and he was having a hard time getting down the fairway on 18, both physically and emotionally. You could see it from 400 yards away. And I kind of started with him, but for the most part, my guys kind of saw what they did on the course and knew that they left some out there. But most of them were pretty proud of the way that they played, and being able to improve from day one, or maintain from day one to day two, without having the major letdowns, minus the one kid who struggled. We got beat. We got beat by a better team, and I made sure to let the kids know that they were better that day. We could talk about all the strokes that we left out there, but then we're dwelling on stuff that could hinder us moving forward. When you got a kid that goes out and fires a 76 2 days in a row, and he's only thinking about the 2 shots that he left out there, rather than the 76 that he hit that were so awesome, that I think it's more beneficial for them to look back and say, we did so many things well. We can talk about a couple of the bad things, but let's concentrate on what we did well. And we got beat by a better team that day, so kudos to them, and hopefully they're successful. And I think it's good for us to focus on those positives moving forward, because I got a pretty young team for the most part, so all these guys are going to be back in this position hopefully in the future, and we can look and say, hey, we had a lot of good stuff going. Let's build on that.
I think that's a really powerful message, because it's not just coaches listening right now, it's parents too. And one of the things that we do as fans of the game, right? And fans of sport, fans of interactions, is to talk about the ways that we might have done it differently, right? We talk about, oh, if I was the coach, I would have done this, or what are the Vikings doing on Sunday, doing that thing, and we forget that when we're coaches and parents, sometimes that's not at all what the athlete needs to grow, right? That's us being fans and being critical and doing some different things, the what ifs and the should haves and all these things. Sometimes it's just really, really important to focus on. Actually, there were a lot of really great shots, and you maybe played your best round of the year when it mattered the most, and it wasn't good enough, and that's okay. Like, it's okay for it not to be good enough, and I think as a parent, for those of you guys out there that have kids that are going into competitive seasons or whatever it might be, like, just being able to step away and say, you know what, let's focus on the really good things, because they are already paying attention to the bad things, right? Because that's where our mind goes to as humans. And I don't know. I was really encouraged, as I said previously, like to watch, just like, the body language is really good most of the time, and you said you could see it from 400 yards away. I was talking to Tony, the girls coach at Minnewaska, and he said one of the things we worked on is, like, I don't want to be able to know how you're playing golf from across the fairway. Like, and I thought that was powerful, because I hadn't thought of it that way. It's like, well, you can see it from a mile away out there because you're wide open, and how easy it is because you're kind of by yourself and all that stuff. So, there's not a question in there, but it's just a thought I think needs to be just addressed, because so many of us take it home or take it somewhere where it's not helping to think back and to look back and to say, what if?
Well, and that happens. I mean, that's the natural response for us in our day to day too, right? We think back about a lot of times we think about the bad stuff that happened that day, not the incredible. Trev, I don't know. I'm trying to stop saying incredible. So if you have another word for me, help me out here. But that's how we live our lives a lot of times, right? We don't think about the good stuff that we did. We think about that one interaction that we had that maybe didn't go as well, that one, call that we didn't do our best, whatever. But Trev, I want to go back. We have a concept. We talk a little bit about zooming in and zooming out. So far we've been kind of zoomed in on recent results, but I want to zoom out for a second, because you have been obviously we've been friends for longer than this, but you've been with Jamie and I from the beginning when we started Eyes Up Mindset, and your programs have been an integral part of our growth. And hopefully we've provided some value to you along the way. But tell us a little bit about your experience, because your team wouldn't have always responded that way that they did after they get second at the section meet, getting beat by a better team. They wouldn't probably have responded that way a few years ago before you kind of took over and started doing some more things intentionally around the mental side of performing.
Yeah, if I look back at my first year coaching, I had some pretty decent talent on the team. My first year coaching golf, I hadn't really started any of this stuff yet. And I think about what happened. We didn't even qualify for day 2 of the section meet. I had a previous section winner state entrant on my roster. I had my 2 seniors this year were golfing at that point in time. And I had some other kids that had been in the program for a while. And I look at what we were not able to accomplish at that point in time. And it gets boiled down to that not being able to manage yourself when the snowball happens. And I kind of reflected a little bit on that over that first year, and kind of into the second year is when we started doing a little bit more intentional work with some of the stuff about, managing your emotions, managing your behaviors on the course, not letting some of those things get you to control what you can control type things when you're out golfing. And then it's kind of progressed from there to having you guys come and visit with the team, talking with you daily, essentially, about what it is that, we can handle, how we can handle the different situations. But I think back that if I would have been able to implement, the stuff that I'm working on right now with the some of the performance journaling and the intentional tracking of different stats and things like that, even during practice, just to show the kids like, hey, you started off making 3 putts at 12 feet, and now we're up to, 7 putts at 12 feet, or your average is 5.5 or whatever. Just to show them improvement, because confidence is a big thing too. And to be able to see that, and to show them backing it up, even though maybe it's not happening on the course, it's taking place in practice. And when you're intentional with that practice, it's going to translate at some point in time for you. So, I think any golf coach that isn't implementing things along this line is really holding some of his players back, from really improving and blossoming. So
I'm curious because we talk a lot about how like seeing progress, and when I say we, I mean the three of us in casual conversation, not necessarily with other groups, but how seeing some version of progress is like a manipulation towards your motivation. Like it's this thing that we need to see to feel like we're moving so that we continue to want to put in the effort to grow. And I'm curious as to like why people don't do it. And then I'm going to come to this thing that you talked about, this performance journaling. About a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, I put out a challenge to our group to do something over the course of time to help ourselves grow and improve as people. And you chose to journal daily. How much has that shaped your perspective around some of this stuff?
That's a tough question for me. I absolutely love journaling. And I'm actually doing 2 different journals right now. One is more of a freelance, and one is more of a answer to a post out of Mr. Ryan Holiday's journal. And it is part of my day. Like I miss it if it doesn't happen. And to be able to sit and reflect, or to plan out, or to kind of see things from a different perspective, depending on, what the question is, or what I'm thinking, or whatever is going through my head at the time. To see that, and then to go back and to look at it, I can't recommend it enough to anybody. You just got to jump in and do it too. Don't sit and dwell, just jump in and start. And
how often do you have your athletes check in with something like, not, I know that you do it in a different way, but how often are your athletes checking in with some version of progress marking, like a journal or performance journal or something like that?
So 2 years ago, I did it every single day, and it got to be too much. And the kids didn't get the value out of it that I wanted them to. So now we look at statistics once a week probably, and those are mostly on course ones. We have them do their tracking when we're doing their putting stuff on the course. I mean, that's just a specific day that I'm going to say, all right, we're tracking today, and then we'll look at those numbers when we're done with that. I check in with my players once a week on more of a personal level, to see how the goals are coming, to see how life is going, to see how school is going, to see how the golf game is, just building that connection, and whatever else I can do to help at that point in time. And once a week or twice a week, is pretty typical for us to do that, or for me to do that.
I'm going to get a little bit granular here. Like, how does that progress through the course of the year? Like, do you see early in the spring, they're a little bit reticent to talk about life stuff, and then it progresses, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different because I've been around 4 of these kids that have been golfing on varsity now for multiple years. I did have 2 junior high kids, or 8th graders, that were with me for the first time this year. So my 2 seniors, we can sit down and talk about anything, and they're open with me, and they like it. I mean, they're diving into whatever it is that I want to talk about, and it kind of, I don't know, that decays the younger you get. I mean, I have an 8th grader that, for him to sit still and talk with me about a real conversation it's a struggle. Not being able to sit still, eye contact is difficult. He looks extremely uncomfortable, and that progression is hopefully going to grow to where my seniors are now with him, where he's going to be okay sitting down and talking to me about duck hunting or whatever it is that he wants to do. Maybe about life, maybe about school, whatever it is.
And some of that, like you said, is just a maturity. It's a process of him growing up, him getting more comfortable with you, but it's also you as a coach investing that time and continuing to invest that time. I think back, you talk about the seniors from this year. Jamie and I were fortunate enough to be there when they were younger, right? And to see them, I just think back to that very first time that we came and spoke and seeing those guys like, what in the world are these two doofuses standing in front of us trying to talk about, setting goals and visualization and like what in the world is going on here? And to now have, I was fortunate enough to be at your practice the week before you competed and to be able to have conversations with those same kids about stuff that they have progressed and matured in the mental side, not only physically, certainly they've become better golfers, but like you said, it's as they continue to grow and get more confident in themselves, it's such a cool thing to be able to connect with them and say, hey, how is life? Because that matters in your performance too, And so when you invest in them and you're following up with them, that is a huge measure of how they're going to go out and perform on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I had one senior this year that he really struggled to start off the school year or to start off the season. He was not shooting numbers that were anywhere close to what, that he wanted to, but what he was capable of. And the difficult conversation that was had to have with him that, I don't need you to shoot the scores right now. I get it. It's frustrating. It's not where you want to be, but I need you to be the senior that you're supposed to be and to be that leader for these 8th graders and 9th graders that I have out here. And he kind of looked at me funny the first time I talked to him about it. And as the season progressed, he turned into the leader that I needed him to be. And he had the 8th graders under his wing, and then his scores started to improve. And the more we talked about the different things that I wanted him to be doing at practice and how we should conduct ourselves when we're on the course and in the van, the more he was stepping up to being the example for all those kids. And then his scores even got better. By the end of the year, he was shooting right where he wanted to be. And he was that leader that we needed to kind of get us to that next step. So it's kind of funny how that worked out hand in hand, that, he saw the importance no matter what his scores were. And then we ended up using all of his scores when we came down the stretch, and he was able to get those young kids in a great place for me, kind of the coach outside the coach type thing.
I think that really brings me back to a different place in our life in some ways, because what I've found in my personal life is when you get some of the things dialed in, the more important stuff, right? Not necessarily the scores or the outcomes, but like being self-aware, being engaged with personal growth, like learning, being a leader, taking on the role of leadership somewhere. All of a sudden, the periphery stuff becomes a whole lot easier. And I think back, we sat in your basement, Trev, the three of us, and we had a whiteboard talking about how we were going to be football coaches someday, right? We were talking about how we're going to be head football coaches. You're the son of a football coach, a legend in the state of Minnesota. And that was something all of us had desired to do and be. And we're talking X's and O's, and we're talking about practice plans and strategies and all this stuff. We're probably 25, right? I mean, it was 10, 15, 12 years ago, something like that. And at some point, it changed from X's and O's and strategy and all of the stuff that is periphery in some ways to how do we grow each other as human beings and as people, and as coaches, how do we build our athletes? Like John and I have had this conversation, and you and I have had this conversation, and you and John have had this conversation, but we probably haven't had it for the three of us. Like, when did that change for you? What was that? What did it take to see it's not about all of the stuff, but it's kind of about this little core. And then when you get that right, everything else gets better.
I don't know that I can actually put like an exact time on it. I, over the last 3 years for sure, have been concentrating on it more in golf and more in football. I coach offensive line and defensive line in football, and we've got a pretty tight knit group there. So pretty comparable to go from, the 8 kids I'm working with in golf to the 8 kids I'm working with, on the football field. But, all of those kids know that I care about them. And all of those kids know that I will run through a brick wall for them. And if they don't get that message from me, then why would I expect it out of them? But I see performance go better when that connection is made and when they want to be at practice and when they want to put in that work. And they listen better when they know that you're there to help them as not only a football player or a golfer, but as a person. And I can't give a direct time of when it changed, but it was almost like a light switch. Like, I am probably not that good of an offensive line coach, but I'm a good people person. So I can teach you your 1, 2, 3 steps and who you need to block, but I'm pretty sure I can teach you how to be a pretty good human being and a nice kid or whatever it is, and we can go from there.
Yeah, we had a guest on a couple of weeks ago, Aaron Moberg, another good friend of ours and teammate, and he said this is a relationship business. Coaching is a relationship business, period. When they believe that you care, they will give you more effort than you ever ask of them.
I need to get hooked up with him. That was a great podcast. Get him on again so I can listen some more. Let's get him out golfing or something so we can dive in a little bit more.
No question. Yeah. I walked away energized big time from that. Same thing. I think every time we have these conversations, we walk away energized because it is a relationship thing that we develop here. And I don't know, I think about how we, have grown together, right? Garden friends, right? We grow together, and I want to encourage people, right? The stuff that is not easy has been the stuff that has made us grow. Trevor and I both teachers, and so when we drive 3 or 4 hours out to deer hunt in South Dakota, we're having hard conversations. Maybe not the first hour, right? The first hour we're talking fantasy football or fantasy golf or something, and then it starts to get into like, how do we change this thing? How do we change this thing that we're struggling with? How do we get better so that we can push each other? And I just encourage people to have those sort of conversations and to let people in, to let people in on the hard stuff that's going on because it shapes us and because it changes us. And these sort of conversations were the reason we wanted to have the podcast anyway, is because those sort of topics, those things that we're unwilling to talk about, are where relationships are rooted. And I don't know, I think there's incredible value in that. And then there's incredible value in doing that with your athletes, because then you get more then you get that relationship to draw out the performance.
Well, and you talked about something, Jamie, doing it with your athletes and talking about hard things and having those conversations. And Trev, I know, we talked before we recorded here. You're going through some stuff personally with your own health, and you've been battling some stuff since you were a kid and on and off. And I think, I know we asked you to share, and hopefully you'll share whatever you're willing to share in that journey. But I think just being the model for your team this year and being willing to say, hey, I'm going to be there when I can be there, and I'm going to give it everything that I have when I'm there. But I also have to go take care of this other stuff. So I have more to say about it before I start crying even more. Maybe just tell us a little bit about kind of your own personal journey this year and maybe how you've managed to, come out smiling and, continuing to pour into those kids when many people out there would have just said, hey, look, guys, this is too much. I got to deal with my own stuff. And, I'll be there in spirit, but I can't be there because I got to take care of this other stuff.
Yeah, so I'm probably going to be right there crying with you here eventually. All juiced up on steroids. Hopefully I don't throw my iPad. We'll just stick on the other side of the emotions. But beginning of March, I was diagnosed with cancer for the second time in my life. This one's a little bit more difficult than the first one. The first one, I was 13 years old. I was ignorant, naive, had no idea what was going on. I showed up because my dad brought me there. Was run through the gamut of treatment at that point in time when I was a teenager, between chemo, radiation, a surgery, and a bone marrow transplant. Roughly about 2 years of time, from that, what was it, the spring of my 7th grade year until I think it was somewhere in 9th grade when I started going back to school full time again. And I've been dealing with things from that, off and on, over the course of the last 20-ish years or so. But that was kind of past me at that point in time. But moving forward into March of this past year, I had some stuff going on health-wise, and just wasn't feeling quite right. And I went in and had a biopsy done, and it came back positive for some cancer. I don't know a lot of details about it, and I don't really care to know. Just the more I know about it, the more I think about it. But I do know that it's my doctor team is working hard on making sure that I am going through the right treatment right now. I'm down at the Mayo Clinic. Was grateful to get in and have a great team put together to help me out down there. So I've gone through about 4 treatments now. I'm going through, can't think of it right now, immunotherapy. So I go down about every 3 or 4 weeks and get an infusion done, and taking a pill every day for that. Had some side effects, but for the most part, I've been feeling pretty good. Ran into a little bit of a hiccup here and there along the way, kind of on a little bit of a setback right now with the treatment stuff. I just got some numbers that aren't quite where they need to be in order to move forward with it. So that's kind of where the whole treatment thing stands at this point in time. If I go back, I talked to my golf team. They were some of the first kids that I talked to, or some of the first people I talked to outside of my family. And I just told them that, hey, unless things get to a point that I physically can't be there, I'm going to be there for you guys this year. I'm invested into the program. I'm invested into the kids. But it's also something that helps take my mind kind of away from some of the stuff that's going on. And it's been a big part of that. There were times where I wasn't able to be at practice or at an event, but it worked itself out. And I think the kids saw that I was invested and that I was ready to go and that I was going to give it my all. And with a smile on my face, I can't go about it any other way. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
We talk about take a step today, one day at a time, right? Get better, grow together. How much does this diagnosis, being the second time around, being that you're a dad now and have a family of your own, like how much is that, magnified in these moments?
So I was thinking about this the other day, like had I know what I know now back when I went through it the first time, how much different it would have been. I have grown probably more in the last 3 months as a person than I have, that J curve kind of took off on me there.
Yeah.
We hit March and it shot straight up. The stuff that we talked about with golf is the stuff that I've got going on in my real life right now. So I'm, the journaling, the reflecting, the communication, the having the difficult conversations, not only in my personal life, but in my professional life. It has made me grow immensely in the fact that I can have a difficult conversation with pretty much anybody at this point in time. And that was something that I struggled with for a long time. I wanted nothing to do with any of those things. And now I look back and I'm like, that conversation's pretty easy in comparison to the one that I just had with Dr. A, B, C, and D, 2 weeks ago. Communication with my wife was something that we struggled with, and now we're in the best place that we've been in I don't know how long. If my kids listen to me a little bit better, that would be a bonus. But the 3.5 and 6-year-old that run around and terrorize my life I love them both, but they are a handful. But we're working on that one. So, another good distraction to have, and not that I want to push the diagnosis off or the treatment off or anything like that, but to be able to clear my mind with a journal or to talk with you guys or, whatever it is, that definitely plays a role in what I got going on. You all right, John?
I'm good. I'm good.
I sent a text message to you guys, pretty early on after the diagnosis, and this one's probably going to bring the tears out for me, but had you guys not started some of this stuff, I probably am not introduced to any of the eyes up side of things in life. Depression, anxiety is something that's been there with me since I've been, gone through that first treatment. And, I'm not a big pill guy. Like I don't want to deal with it in that way. Working out is my way. Going for a walk, hunting, fishing, golfing, all those activities. Sometimes that's not quite enough. But grateful for you guys starting your journey, because I think maybe it was meant to be that you guys started it.
Yeah. And it's funny because, we have all these things that we say all the time, and I have, the live eyes up on my hat and this wall behind me. And the reality is you saying that, and the reality of the situation is every day you are the example that we can draw from in saying, that's a dude that's doing what we are trying to teach and what we are trying to do, and so it's cool to hear you say that. And I think, I think we all probably believe that things happen for a reason in this life. And if you're willing to see the connectivity of those things, even cooler. But yeah, so I guess I'm grateful for you continuing to provide that example, not only for your team and those parents of those kids and all the other coaches that you interact with, but for us and for me personally.
And I think back to Coach Jay, right? And he, with teary eyes on this podcast, said it can't be just words. It can't be just words. And if I am grateful for anything, as John said, is that as a group, we have begun to live this way, and we need models consistently. And sometimes I fail and I need to look at John, and sometimes I fail and I need to look at you and the other members of our community that lift us up. And I'm so proud to call you a friend, and we love you and we care about you, and we want nothing but the best for you and your journey. And however we can help, let us know, man, because we're here.
Yeah, for sure. I am one podcast behind, so I've listened to the rest, and you guys just keep doing that. That helps me take at least 45 minutes out of my day typically. So, yeah, I'm grateful to have you guys in my life also. The other two that aren't in this group too fit in very nicely. Yeah, I like it better when we can do it in real life instead of on real computers, but
yeah,
some not always possible.
John moves too much for that.
Yeah.
Come on now. So Trev, I just want to, before we let you go here, I want to bring it back to coaching and kind of the journey of mental skills and mental performance. Cause ultimately when we zoom out, that's kind of our basis of what we're doing here. I had a conversation with a coach yesterday, a college volleyball coach. And he's like, look, we're really good. The piece that's missing is the mental side of our performance right now. And I'm working on that, but part of me doesn't really know where to start. And so I think there is a lot of coaches potentially listening right now that are in that same spot where it's like, I want to do something. You've been down that road. You're 4 or 5 years down that road now. You've learned a lot of things, but what's something that you would say to those coaches that know that that's what they need, but aren't sure how to get there and what it all entails, but how do they even start that process? And what's your encouragement to them?
Well, I would say to look at a big picture about, what's the what's the specific thing that you want to try to improve? Is it managing your emotions on the court or on the course? Is it to be able to perfect a skill or whatever it is that you want to try and dial into? You have to come up with a way to measure it, and you have to come up with a way to teach it, and you have to come up with a way for them to understand it. And if I look at golf from this year, the thing that I wanted my kids to be able to do more than anything else was to manage themselves emotionally on the golf course. So we talked about when the snowball is going to start, because it's inevitable that it's going to happen. There's going to be a bad hole. How are you going to get your way through that? Your body language that you're putting off not only affects your golf swing, but it affects your emotions. So you need to make sure that you have your shoulders high all the time. And those were the two things that I really hammered home this year when I was talking to the kids. So we talking with Jamie, we developed our trigger word, and we developed our swing flow, and then our saying for our swing flow. And then from there, we talked about our body language, and then we moved forward. And I kind of looked at the big picture of what it was that I wanted to do. So you definitely have to be able to measure it and look at it and make sure that they can understand it. So sometimes it's not going to be in, Jamie's technical terms. It's going to be in, John and I's conversation about what we need to do something or how we need to get it done, just so they can understand and apply it. And that's, if they can't do that, then you got to start over. And, sometimes it starts with a dart throw, and, sometimes it starts with a little bit more planned stuff, but just start and do it and adjust as you go along, because then that's you showing the example, like, trial and error. This didn't work. Let's go back and try it again.
That's such unbelievable advice, because you're not going to be perfect walking out the gate. It's just not. And we aren't in our, like, there are things that we do that I'm like, man, that wasn't very good. I'm sorry, like, I'll give you more if necessary. And the reality is, like, you're going to make mistakes. We're going to have steps forward and steps backwards. Like, but if you don't ever start, you got no chance.
And to jump on that just a little bit, like, let your team know, that one's on me. I didn't do it right. We're going to try this time. We'll see if it works, see if we get better. Because if they see you fail and move forward from it, like, that's a good lesson for them too.
I love the simplicity of that, Trev. You said, and basically what I heard how I interpreted what you said was, pick something that you're going to focus on. You can't do it all at once. Right. And I know, and not that you made this mistake, I certainly made this mistake as a first-time head coach. I wanted to do it all at once. Right. And that's true of the program development. That's true of the X's and O's. It's true of the mental stuff. Let's do it all in year one. Well, that doesn't work. Right. Identify one thing. And I just wrote this down, and then you didn't even say it yet. And I wrote it down, and then you articulated it so well, but it's identify what you want, make a plan, practice it, and adjust. Right. Like, and then you just went through that. And I think that's incredible. So if you're a coach out there listening, you want to start and implement these things, take Trevor's advice, identify one thing that you want your team to focus on and improve, and make a plan, practice it, and then adjust as you need to. Trev, awesome to have you, man. I look forward to the next time we get to have you on.
Yeah, let's not wait that it's quite so long this next time.
All right. Sounds good. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you guys.
Take it easy, Trev.
Thanks again to our good friend Trevor for joining us. Always a good time to catch up. Jamie, lots of takeaways today. Obviously an emotional segment there at the end, but if you're a coach or you're a parent or you're an athlete out there, there's a ton of takeaways I think you can pick out of this thing. And we were just talking again before we hit record here, but what stood out to you? Because I think you said something and I cut you off and said, let's just record because it's going to be good.
Yeah, he's talking about an athlete that maybe wasn't scoring the way that he wanted to early in the year. And he said, let's not worry about the score. Let's just do the other things I need from you. As in, you're a senior, be a leader, start to figure out how to kind of shepherd these young kids into being better golfers, better leaders, whatever it might be. And his scores started to take care of themselves, right? He started to score better. And then he started to dial in even more to the stuff that wasn't the score on the course. And then the scores came. And I just think that's so relevant. And I've seen it personally in my life is when I focus on the core of who I am, when I focus on the important stuff that matters to my community, when I focus on the important stuff that matters to my family, all of a sudden I'm out running. I'm taking care of myself physically. I'm eating better. I'm journaling. I'm doing the things that I want to be doing that add up to a better scorecard, right? In life, days go better because I've focused on the core of who I am and who I want to be. And I think that as an athlete, like, can be transformational also. Work on getting better, and this work on getting better in every area of your life, or the core focus area of your life, whether that's faith or improvement or reading, whatever, and then it's going to improve somewhere else too.
No, I think and that zooms out to the team aspect of it too, where we talked about at the end, right? His challenge or his encouragement to a coach is like, identify, right? Identify your core. And he didn't necessarily go the next step and say it will improve everything by proxy. When you start to focus on something, and you identify this is the key thing that we're going to work on as a team, make a plan, practice it, and then adapt. But I think that's so true. And a lot of times, again, when we try to do too many things, we try to focus on too many things that we are going to change in our life, it ends up just being mediocre. It seems it's hard to wrap my head around sometimes, because it's like, no, I need to be intentional about all of these areas all the time. But how have we learned over the last year and a half or 2 years that when we try to do that, it's actually a negative, because we're trying to do too much rather than saying, hey, we're going to narrow in, we're going to focus on this one area. And by proxy, it impacts those other things.
Well, our attention, we get better at attending, right? We get better at attending to the important things. So then when the new thing comes, we're not attending to the periphery of that thing. We're attending to the important part of that thing that we're getting at. And so it focuses our attention, which, let's just face it, most of us aren't very good at, and I think when we bring back to Trevor's story, like a diagnosis like he's been dealt with, a hand that he's been dealt, makes you focus on the important stuff in life. And what did he say? In the last 3 months, he's grown more as a person than he has in a long, long time. And I think it's directly related. I think it's directly related to this idea that when we focus specifically on something, when we attend to who we are becoming, all of it starts to fall into place.
No doubt. A couple of asks from you guys as listeners. One, appreciate your continued support of us and what we are doing. It helps us a ton when you share our podcast, our YouTube channel, Eyes Up Mindset, rate, review, all of those things. But the bigger thing on my heart right now, Jamie, Trevor, he's going through these things. He never would and never has asked for anything from us. But we're doing some stuff for him, and a group, his communities are immense and they care a lot about it. He's poured a lot into the places that he has been, and they're looking to give back now. We have a benefit plan for him August 15th. It's in Glenwood, Minnesota. So if you live in that area, by all means, it's at Minnewaska House from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. There's a silent auction, games, food, the whole thing. We'd love to see you there. If you are listening and you're like, I don't know Trevor, but he's an awesome dude. And he, my wife the other day was like, Trevor's a hero. He's battling this thing, right? And still pouring into everybody else. But if you're out there and you want to support him and his family, you can send financial donations to @Solem Strong, SOLEM Strong, on Venmo. Or if you are out there and you're like, hey, I have a silent auction item I'd like to donate, or I'd like to give in that way, we're going to have all of those notes in our show notes, and also reach out to us. We'll get you connected to those people. Let's let him feel the love, and him and his family have been incredible. Again, not only to our lives, Jamie, but to the communities they've been in. So let's rally around and support them as well. But anything else before we wrap it up?
I think his toughness in this time and the example he set for these kids and for his community, I'm in awe of who he is and the mark he's leaving and will continue to leave on that place. And um, we would really appreciate your support in helping us uh, pull this thing off in the coolest way we can. So
Thank you for, again, supporting us, supporting Trevor. Get after it today. And as always, with eyes up.